So I keep forgetting to add in the eyebrows in each of these demos, so I apologize. Before we move on, I want to add the eyebrows into this secondary spec map. So I'm going to go back to my base spec and find my eyebrows. I'm going to copy them, go back to the oil mask, and paste them in. And I'm going to go to screen and delete that invert. In fact, I'm going to delete this entire layer mask. All together. There we go. So now what's going to happen is this map is driving a tighter eccentricity in the highlight of the reflection and the spec. Well, technically the spec. So wherever it's going to be whiter or lighter, the spec is going to get tighter and give the sense that it's a little bit wetter. And so I want that actually in the eyebrows as well, because I want that tight highlight to be in the eyebrows and not in the base spec. And that's going to give it a slightly different surface quality than the skin, so it'll make it look a bit more like eyebrows and less like eyebrows painted on skin. So I just wanted to add an addendum to that. So we're good to go. The next map I want to talk about is, if we go back to Photoshop, take a look at this girl in particular. So a map that is very successful, I found, is another mask that'll help drive kind of that sweat, the beads of sweat that you'll see on a face. Now, we're not going to go as far as to paint actual beads of sweat. Typically in production, if it's a type of bead of sweat that's going to displace off the surface, so it actually looks like sweat and it drips down the face, that's typically handled by effects, and they'll do something on top of the surface. So we don't, as texture painters, handle stuff like that. However, we want to get that sense of kind of sweat buildup on the face that's not going to break the surface. That's just going to be in the skin, and it's going to give it a little bit more shine and a sense that there's a little bit of, you know, sweat in areas that we want, especially around the nose, and around the eyes, maybe even in the ears and on the neck. Areas that we think would be appropriate for whatever character we're doing. Having said that, I'm going to perform that map now. So to keep things clean, I'm actually going to copy and paste this oil mask and call it sweat mask, because I want to use some of the layers in here. I'm going to delete the eyebrows, don't need those anymore. And the first thing I want to do is I want to create a texture that mimics the kind of beaded sweat that you see on skin. So instead of hand painting all that with a brush, I'm going to make it much quicker. I'm going to use a tileable. So I'm going to go into procedural, pattern, tiled. And then from here, I'm going to grab a tileable texture that I have in a folder, and it's literally just a galvanized metal. And I really like this texture in here. I like what's going on here, and I think it has a little kind of an organic feel to it, and I think it's going to give me what I want. So again, this is all, you know, experimentation. So I'm going to just drag and drop it into here, and there we go. Obviously the scale's off, so I'm going to change the scale to something I think is a bit more appropriate. And this is where having really good UVs is going to save you so much time. So you don't have to worry about a heap of stretching, a ton of stretching on the model. And if you spend a little bit more time on the UVs, you're going to be saving yourself hours and hours of work of cleanup that you may have to do if the UVs aren't good. So I'm happy with this. From here, I'm going to desaturate it Just going to go to an adjustment stack, add adjustment stack luminosity. And then from here, I'm going to add a levels. I want to just grab the tops like so. Perfect. So this is going to mimic that kind of really cool beaded sweat, and because of this galvanized metal, because of the texture, it's giving me exactly what I want. I could have just created a brush that would mimic this, but I find this is much faster if you know beforehand what you want. There's a lot of variation in here, from the dark flakes to the light flakes. It's just gonna read really well. But obviously I don't want it all over the face. Instead, I actually want to have it masking in pretty much the areas that we have for this AO, this ambient occlusion. So I'm going to start with this as a base and see how it looks. So in order to do that, I'm going to right click, go to layer mask, add layer mask, hide all. From here, I'm going to, this is kind of a backwards way of doing things. There's no, from my understanding and some of the testing I've done, I can't really find an easier way to do this. Basically, I want to take this ambient occlusion layer and put it as a layer mask into this layer, this tiled layer. And in Photoshop, it's pretty much, you can copy and paste it. But in order to do that, you have to first create a layer mask here. And then in order to get something in that layer mask, we could, let me see if I can just copy, paste. Yep, so I can't just copy and paste into it. So what I have to do is I have to right click, layer mask, make mask group, and it's going to make a stack, and I will just click there and paste this AO into this mask group, and then I can blow this one away. And that will, and then to better illustrate this, I'm going to create a base layer here, because I don't want, actually I can just blow all this away, because I don't need that stuff anymore. And there we go. So the ambient occlusion is revealing sweat beads in just the areas that I want. But it's not exactly everywhere I want. I want to adjust this a bit more. So I'm going to click my mask group here, pin this down. I'm going to hide palettes. And then in this mask group, actually I'm going to change my paint buffer. Somehow I got squashed. That should do it. There. So I'm going to grab a soft brush, and I'm just going to fade it back. Actually, sorry, I don't want to go into that layer. I actually want to go into this. I want to paint actually directly into the mask. There we go. I'm going to fade this back. To just localize it around the eyes for now. And do it on this side as well. So this is a trick I learned a while back for some really talented painters. And when plugged in correctly in the shader parameters, you get this really cool kind of beaded sweat without making them look like beads on the face. And it's such a great look. I find it very useful. So I'm going to go back here and paint this out in the lips. I don't want it on the lips at all. Or the nose for that matter. Maybe a stronger brush. Make this a bit quicker. There we go. We can take this out. Back of the head as well. Do not need it there. So a lot of the time when painting organic things, a lot of time it's about deconstructing and breaking down the surface into identifiable attributes. And then from there, you build maps to either create those attributes or control those attributes. So having the ability to quickly deconstruct things visually and having a game plan is vital in order to become a successful texture painter. So I implore you guys to start utilizing your observational skills, especially when you're thinking about the skin that you want to paint for your characters, and start trying to break down the surface into identifiable features and attributes. That's going to make painting much faster. So now that I've got most of the stuff out that I want, I'm going to start adding it back in. So one place in particular is the nose. I want to get that sense of beaded sweat on the nose. It's going to read really nicely. And maybe on the upper lip. Kind of get a Richard Nixon thing going on. He always had a very sweaty upper lip. It was always kind of a concern of his when he did public speaking. When it had to, every commercial break, they had to blot his face, especially his upper lip. Apparently it didn't poll very well with viewers to see him sweating, so, which is understandable. Cool. And then I like the placement, I like the stuff going on in the neck, so I'm going to actually add that in a bit more because he's wearing that heavy armor. I'm going to get the sense that it's pretty hot under there. So this is one way to paint sweat, and like a lot of my other maps, I'm just showing you guys one way to do things. The key to take away from most of this stuff is the methodology, the reasons why I do it, and the end result. So when you guys are painting your characters, you guys aren't stuck, and you guys understand the reason why I'm doing certain things. So you can either mimic them for your character or elaborate on them, you know, make it your own. Cool. Do some sweatiness on the, and then I can even use an organic brush to make this even more random on the head. Start with something like that and then fade it back a bit. So there's a lot of opportunities to be even more organic with your painting. So I encourage you guys to do just that. There we go. So this can pick up some really nice sweatiness on the face. Maybe some on the chin here. So on those glancing angles we get some breakup. Maybe up into the nose slightly. And what's even cooler is, you know, say I've been working on this for a little while and I decide, you know what, these beads of sweat are actually too big. They're going to read too large. And I want it to be even finer. Well, this is still a tileable. So non-destructively I can just type in a different number and voila, I have even tighter. I can go even more 8x8. So we're getting really microfine stuff in here. So it's really, really powerful. I'll leave it at 5. So building things up non-destructively is going to be a huge time saver when you want to do things organically on the fly, especially when you're painting organic things. I think it applies even to hard surface, but especially for organic, when the nature of painting organic things changes, especially by directors, you know, sensibilities, or art direction by art directors or visual effects supervisors, you need to have the know-how in order to be flexible with creating revisions for your maps. So it may not look like much when you're looking at it, but you know, this is going to give a really cool, just that a little bit extra that makes it look a little bit more real, identifiable with the sweatiness. There we go. So this week is a little bit shorter, just because some of the, in terms of material, just because some of the stuff I've covered, especially making spec maps, it's a pretty quick process, to be frank. If you've laid down the groundwork and put in the work for your color maps and your displacement maps, doing your spec maps is cake. It should only take you an hour or so to get something very decent out, and then spending another, you know, half a day painting maps like these. And then every once in a while you'll paint even more maps, so you'll do like masks for just ears, masks for just eyelids, masks for just the nose, for just the lips. So it gives look dev even more ability to control subsurface qualities and the shader parameters. So a lot of the time is painting all these isolation masks, as opposed to how much time you're painting in your color maps, your spec, and your displacement. So keep that in mind when you're painting skin textures. This is what you would see at a traditional big house studio that's working on, you know, big creatures and stuff like that. So long story short, the demos here are pretty short compared to previous weeks, but I want you guys to go through and start finding textures that you can pull off effects like these with the techniques I've shown you. And we can look over some of your techniques and some of your final results and see what you guys get. So feel free to explore, because painting your spec map shouldn't take too long this week, I don't expect. So feel free to explore with maps like these. Even if you want to paint even like sweat drip maps on the side of the face, from the temples to the chin, feel free to paint those as a separate mask in itself. Have at it. The point is for you guys to get familiar with these techniques, familiar with the types of maps and what they're supposed to look like in order to achieve some photoreal stuff. So good luck.